In this video, I'm going to take on one of the biggest debates currently troubling economists. Should we have a gold standard? Now, first question is, why gold? Why is it called a gold standard? Then we'll look at what a gold standard actually does, and should we return to one today? Usual caveat, this is not a degree course. I'm not going to go into the history of gold standards. There are other videos out there that do that. I'm going to get straight in. So, why a gold standard? Why don't we have a diamond, platinum, bananas or rice standard? Well, the idea of tying a currency to a commodity isn't new, all right? And that commodity could in theory be anything. Yeah, it could be silver, okay, it could be wheat, it could be platinum, diamonds, or it could even be a basket of commodities. And actually, one or two of those ideas have been tried in the past. So why gold? Why pick on gold? All right? Well, gold has a number of qualities. Chemists will know this stuff much better than I do. It has a number of qualities that make it special. Some would say unique. All right? What are those qualities? Then we'll get straight in with how a gold standard might work and what the point would be. All right? Well, those qualities are there's nothing quite like gold. All right? It's pretty hard to find a replacement. It's quite hard to forge gold. Okay? It's very, very malleable. Okay? You can take 1 ounce of gold, I'm reliably told, and stretch it into a 50-mile wire or more if you're clever enough. All right? You can also beat it into an area of about 9 square meters, should you wish to do such a thing. You can make it into bars, you can make it into a ring. Okay? You can store it. So it's malleable, it's flexible, and it's extremely useful in a lot of industrial as well as sort of cosmetic applications. It is relatively easy to store. Make it into bars, stick it in a vault, job done. The fact you can make it into heavy bars makes it also quite difficult to steal, unlike something like diamonds, for example. All right? It's reasonably rare. Another important aspect of a commodity that we're going to use for a monetary standard in just a moment. It's finite supply. You might find a new mine under your back lawn, but I doubt it. Okay, the world's supply is reasonably well known. Yes, if everybody in the world melted down everything they owned of gold and flogged it simultaneously, you might have a problem with supply, but that's unlikely to happen. Okay? And it's quite difficult to destroy. In fact, it's almost impossible to destroy. So gold has a number of properties that make it valuable. Right? It's also nice and shiny and can be turned into lovely jewellery that we like to look at. So, leaving aside the properties of gold, there is a reason why gold is a very, very important metal and commodity. So we don't have a gold standard. You could have a silver standard, you could have a gold and silver standard, you could have a basket of commodities standard, but gold tends to be the one that people look at when they ask the question, should we tie currencies to something? Right. If you don't tie currencies to a commodity, what do you have? Little aside, you have a fiat currency. And fiat currencies are ones like we have today that are linked to nothing. They're linked to faith, if you like. Why is a pound worth a pound? Because everybody says it's worth a pound. Okay? There's nothing backing that pound. I can't walk into my local bank and say, give us 1 ounce of gold. All right, well I can, but I'll get a short response. There is no standard backing that £1 coin that I carry around with me. With a standard of some sort, say a gold standard, there is. So for example, what would you do? So how would you create a gold standard? Now the biggest, most important currency in the world is actually the US dollar. So let's start there. So a gold standard, and it has been tried, would say what we'll do is fix the price of gold in dollars. Right, so maybe what you do is you say, henceforth, all right, we will say that 1 ounce of gold is equal to 100 US dollars. All right? And that means that $1 is worth 1/100th of an ounce of gold. With a gold standard, the point is this. You fix that, you declare that, and it means that people can go to their central bank with $100, should they wish to, and demand an ounce of gold. Equally, of course, it means you should know you can turn an ounce of gold into $100. In other words, the dollar is linked directly to the commodity. Now, you might think, what's the point of that? I mean, first of all, has it been tried? Yes, it has. Without going into the history of all this, there was something called the Bretton Woods Agreement, introduced after World War II, 1946. A gold standard was introduced, and then you could sell gold to the US Treasury at around $35 per ounce fixed. had all finished in 1971. And we haven't had what I'm describing here since. No major Western economy has used it since. We're all using these fiat currencies, which means they're not backed by anything, okay, and they're not guaranteed to be worth any amount of gold. Now, what's the point of doing that precisely? Well, fans, gold bugs, would say you cure two potential problems. One, inflation, all right? Because basically, if a central bank starts messing around with the supply of money, I'll come back to this idea at the end of the video, but if a central bank starts messing around with the supply of money, okay, what will tend to happen is people will start to doubt the supply, doubt the value of money. They'll say, if the number of dollars in circulation starts to increase through, say, money printing or quantitative easing, something I'll cover in another video, by the way, the actual mechanics of that, but if a central bank tries to mess around and increase the supply of money, okay, people will lose confidence in it, because the more there is of something, the less rare it becomes. It's true of money like any other commodity, and people will start to think, oh, I don't want dollars, I'll switch into gold. Now, if they do that, they start offloading their dollars and demanding gold, queuing up at the central bank saying, give us gold at the fixed rate we've all agreed. What will happen is the central bank will end up with a load of dollars, which are increasingly worthless, and no gold. In other words, the central bank will just be drained of all its gold reserves. Okay? So the idea is that you contain inflation, and the way you do that, by the way, there are several aspects to inflation, which I'm not going to cover in this video. The supply of money is only one of them, but gold bugs and people who like gold standards would say what you do is you curtail the temptation of a central bank to just start releasing more dollars into the system. All right? And the reason you want to do that is because it's inflationary. Those extra dollars start fighting for an increasingly small pool relatively of goods and services that pushes the price of those goods and services up. And the way you stop that happening is a gold standard. Okay? Secondly, you increase the stability of exchange rates. That's the other thing that a gold standard can do. How would that work exactly? Well, something like this. I'll make up the numbers a little bit here. Let's say Canada declares that 1 ounce of gold, okay, very simple example, is worth 100 Canadian dollars. Right, that's their gold standard, if you like. And the Mexicans say 1 ounce of gold is worth 5,000 pesetas. Okay, I hope I've spelled that correctly. Or 5,000 pesos. Okay, apologies to any Mexican viewers out there. Now, these two central banks have declared the value of gold in their currency. So what? Well, that almost, it's called triangulation, but it's just drawing the obvious conclusion, fixes that exchange rate. You could say, well, almost QED, if that's fixed and that's fixed. So in other words, these currencies are pegged to gold, then the exchange rate between Canadian dollars and the Mexican currency must be 50 to 1. So you could say, well, on that basis, 1 Canadian dollar equals 50 pesos. I think it's a better way to describe it. Okay, you get the idea. So by having a gold standard, you link currencies together. You invoke a kind of fixed exchange rate system. Why would you want to do that? Because we don't have that at the moment. Exchange rates are free to float. The pound goes down, it goes up against the euro, against the dollar. Like you can have sudden plunges, sudden rises. So we don't have this at the moment. But the idea is that creates exchange rate stability amongst the currencies that apply the standard. Of course, not everyone will necessarily apply the standard, but when we had a gold standard, it meant that the Western economy's exchange rates were perceived and were relatively stable. So, what's not to like? A gold standard, in theory, contains inflation, all right, and also maintains reasonably stable fixed exchange rates. Those are sort of two major benefits of a gold standard. What's not to like? Well, critics say you can't have today's scenario under a gold standard, and that's a bad thing, they say. Not sure I agree, I'll point out why in a moment. They say, well, look, if we had a gold standard, I mean, how would a country in trouble devalue its currency to encourage exports and get out of the quagmire it's in? Could a central bank slash interest rates okay, which is going to bring the currency down in order to stimulate exporters and get things going again. How can you do that so easily with the gold standard? Or how do you have quantitative easing with the gold standard? You can't just start printing currency to get out of trouble, because as we saw before, boosting the supply of a currency is inflationary, and a gold standard in theory stops that happening. So critics would say, well, you can't react to events, it's all too rigid. Okay, you can't cope with economic shocks when you have a gold standard. Well, all I would say to you in response is this. When we had a gold standard, there were one or two economic shocks, but you get those anyway. And a gold standard actually doesn't completely eliminate all of the response tools available at a central bank, but I might cover that in another video. Okay? And we did have a period of relative economic stability when there was a gold standard. And more to the point is this: if you think that central banks have cured anything today, you're sadly mistaken. What do we have? We have zombie banks stalking the land. And I'll be covering zombie banks in my next video, by the way. We have rising high unemployment in the Eurozone and elsewhere. We have low to zero growth in many important economies. All right. So what exactly has that been a cure for? All right. I would say that if we're not careful, we're heading into a kind of dead zone globally, a bit like Japan's seen for the best part of 2 decades. And therefore, people who point the finger and say, oh, we don't want to return to a gold standard, are missing the point. Without a gold standard, heaven knows what murky zombie world awaits us as a global economy. To download this free video to your favourite mobile device, find us on iTunes by searching for MoneyWeek. And the entire video archive is also available free. Just visit MoneyWeek.com.